Hitler's four-year plan to revitalize the German economy and military was well underway. The nation was preparing for war, but there was one issue in particular that could throw a wrench in these plans. Nazi Germany was supposed to be self-sufficient, yet they were largely reliant on foreign nations for their supply of fats and oils. Margarine, a staple in German kitchens, became increasingly popular with the introduction of whale oil as a cheaper substitute for its traditional ingredients. Whale fat, with its multifaceted applications ranging from food production to war machinery and explosives, became a strategic commodity. By 1930, Germans were consuming 17.5 pounds of margarine per person annually, and soon after, Germany had become the second largest importer of Norwegian whale oil in the world, around 200,000 metric tons each year. Not only that, but many in Germany knew that they would soon be at war, and buying so much whale oil was already putting strains on their foreign currency reserves. Hitler had placed Hermann Goering in charge of the four-year plan, so this foreign reliance was his problem to solve. In response, Goering created the German Fat Plan, with the intention of boosting Germany's domestic production of fats such as butter, lard, margarine, and much more. This Fat Plan led the Third Reich to cast its gaze towards the unclaimed territories of Antarctica, where the Norwegians had been whaling to great success. German Counselor of State Helmut Voltat had proposed the idea of an expedition to Goering, both to win access to the resource-rich waters and to scout possible locations for a German base. Particularly, they set their eyes on an unclaimed region known as Queen Maud Land, a prime location for any potential base of operations. A number of expeditions were planned, with the inaugural exploratory journey taking place in 1938 to 1939, aiming to aerially chart the territory prior to staking any claims or determining a suitable site for a whaling station. Prior to this expedition, the Germans had only embarked on two major Antarctic journeys, both filled with trials and tribulations. The first significant German foray into this remote region occurred with the Gauss expedition, led by the esteemed Erich von Drygalski. Drygalski, a professor of geography and geophysics at the University of Berlin, had earned his reputation in extreme environments during a previous expedition to Greenland. Funded by the German government, the Gauss expedition set out in 1901 with high hopes of unraveling the mysteries of the Antarctic sector between 60 and 90 degrees east. Despite facing numerous challenges, including being trapped in ice for the winter, Drygalski and his crew made the most out of their situation, conducting extensive scientific research and even witnessing their leader ascend in a hydrogen-filled balloon. However, their substantial contributions to Antarctic knowledge were overshadowed by other more sensational journeys closer to the pole. Following Drygalski's expedition was the tumultuous Second German National Antarctic Expedition, led by Wilhelm Filchner. Filchner, a bold explorer with extensive experience in Asia, faced internal dissension and external criticism, particularly from Drygalski. With a power struggle between the German Navy and Army playing out in the background and compounded by the unfortunate leadership of Captain Richard Vassell, the expedition was fraught with challenges. Despite these obstacles, Filchner's expedition made significant strides in Antarctic exploration, discovering new territories and contributing valuable geographical data. However, the journey ended in controversy and discord, casting a long shadow on Germany's polar endeavors. As the preparations for the Third German Antarctic Expedition were underway, it was clear that the legacy of these previous expeditions were mixed. The foundation laid by Drygalski and Filchner was undeniably crucial, but the challenges they faced highlighted the need for strong leadership and unity, particularly in the unforgiving conditions of Antarctica. The third expedition, led by Alfred Richner, aimed to navigate through this legacy, embarking on a journey that was as much about asserting Germany's strategic interests as it was about exploring the unknown. By December 1938, following Goering's acceptance of the plan and the commencement of preparatory work in May of the same year, the expedition officially launched. The expedition's ship, the MS Schwabenland, named after the Swabia region of Bavaria, was a freighter built in 1925 and was capable of carrying and catapulting aircraft. On January 19, 1939, the ship arrived at the Princess Martha coast and immediately began charting the region. The journey had a multifaceted agenda. While among its publicly avowed aims was the continuation of the scientific studies begun earlier in the century, there were underlying military objectives wrapped in secrecy. Hermann Goering, with vested interests, sought to learn more about the strategic opportunities that the Antarctic region might offer, particularly keen on understanding the functioning of aircraft in extreme low temperatures, knowledge crucial for future military strategies including the anticipated invasion of the Soviet Union. However, an issue with Germany's plans had quickly presented itself. Just 5 days prior to the arrival of the German expedition, the Norwegians had officially claimed the region as Queen Maud Land via a royal proclamation. Despite this, the expedition proceeded with its planned activities. A temporary base was quickly established, and over the following weeks, numerous teams embarked on exploratory walks along the coast, marking claim reservations on various natural landmarks. The region they charted was christened Neuschwabenland, or New Swabia, named in honor of the ship that facilitated their journey. Through oblique aerial photography, an area spanning approximately 250,000 kilometers squared, lying between roughly 11 degrees west and 20 degrees east, was mapped. A significant discovery was made in the form of a new mountain range, extending over 800 kilometers in length and rising to heights of 3,000 meters, situated around 200 kilometers inland from the coast. This geographical feature had remained unseen by the Norwegians during their aerial exploration of the ice off Queen Maud Land as part of the Norvegia expedition in 1929. Nazi flags were strategically placed on the sea ice along the coast, asserting territorial claims. In tandem, 7 photographic survey flights were conducted by the ship's seaplanes. The planes deployed nearly a dozen 1.2-meter-long aluminum arrows, each equipped with 30-centimeter steel cones and stabilizer wings adorned with Nazi swastikas. These were embedded into the ice at crucial turning points of the flight path, symbolically outlining Germany's territorial claims. An additional 8 flights targeted specific areas of interest, resulting in the capture of more than 16,000 aerial photographs, a portion of which utilized color film. The expedition enjoyed the favor of good weather, a pivotal factor in its successful aerial mapping endeavors. In February 1939, the return journey to Germany began. The expedition used this opportunity to conduct oceanographic studies near Bouvet Island and Fernando de Noronha, simultaneously evaluating the suitability of the isolated Brazilian islands of Ilha Trindade and Ilhas Martin Vaz, positioned almost 1,000 kilometers east of Vitoria in Brazil, as potential landing sites for the German Navy and U-boats. The MS Schwabenland would eventually return to Germany and successfully reach the port of Hamburg on April 11th. The expedition would ultimately yield minimal results for Germany, despite the fact that it increased the size of the explored area in Antarctica by 16%. The country did not pursue any territorial claims made to the region. Planned follow-up German expeditions for 1939 to 1940 and 1940 to 1941, which might have facilitated the establishment of a base, were rendered impossible due to the outbreak of World War II. By 1945, with Germany's surrender and subsequent occupation, any potential claims or plans for the area were completely abandoned. Following the secretive German expedition to Queen Maud Land in early 1939, the landscape of Antarctic intrigue became fertile ground for conspiracy theories and misinformation. The clandestine nature of the expedition, combined with the geopolitical turbulence of World War II in the early Cold War years, fueled speculation and myth-making. The unexpected arrival of 2 U-boats in Argentina after the German surrender, the massive U.S. Navy operation named Highjump in Antarctica, and the classified detonation of 3 nuclear weapons in the region as part of Operation Argus all contributed to a complex web of unanswered questions and shadowy narratives. The first event after the war to spur speculation was on July 10, 1945, when U-530, a German U-boat, made its way to an Argentine naval base at Mar del Plata. Lieutenant Otto Vermuth, the U-boat's captain, seemed to have anticipated a welcoming reception from the Argentinians. Despite the widespread news of Hitler's suicide on April 30th, a belief took hold that U-530 had successfully extracted Hitler, Eva Braun, Martin Bormann, and others from Germany, dropping them off on the shores of Patagonia or within a secretive refuge in Antarctica, dubbed New Berchtesgaden. This theory gained traction and was disseminated widely when on July 6, Ladislas Sabo, a Hungarian exile residing in Argentina, published an elaborate account of Hitler's purported escape and subsequent sanctuary in Queen Maud Land in the Argentine newspaper La Critica. The story quickly spread, capturing global attention and being featured in major newspapers worldwide, including a headline in the Toronto Star on July 18th that read, "Hitler's on ice in Antarctic." Public fascination and speculation surged even further when another U-boat, U-977, commanded by Heinz Schaefer, made its way to Mar del Plata on August 17th. Given that Argentina joined the Allies at the end of the war, Vermuth, Schaefer, and their respective crews were taken as POWs. They underwent extensive interrogation by the Argentine Navy, the US Navy, and the Royal Navy, with the primary focus being to ascertain whether Hitler or any other high-ranking Nazis had indeed escaped from Germany via submarine. Following these investigations, the interrogators concluded that the submarine's delayed arrival in the South Atlantic was innocuous, leading to the eventual release of the two U-boat commanders. The flurry of speculation and conspiracy theories surrounding the events of 1945 did not cease. Szabo, in his 1947 publication, Hitler is Alive, propagated the belief that the U-boats were components of a submarine fleet assigned to transport Hitler and other high-ranking Third Reich officials to Antarctica. He asserted that a secretive base, referred to as New Berchtesgaden, was established during 1938 to 1939 by Schwabenland under Admiral Dönnitz's instructions. Many subsequent authors would continue to propagate these conspiracies, many contradicting each other or even themselves in some cases. Howard Buchner and Wilhelm Bernhardt, for example, presented a different narrative in their 1989 book, Hitler's Ashes: Seeds of a New Reich. Buchner and Bernhardt suggested that Hitler did in fact perish in his Berlin bunker, but his remains were subsequently transported to Antarctica by U-977 accompanied by other submarines, before heading to Mar del Plata. They claimed that Hitler's ashes, alongside Nazi treasures, were concealed in 6 bronze lead-sealed crates and deposited in Queen Maud Land by U-530. These were allegedly hidden in a unique natural ice cave in the Mühlig-Hoffmann Mountains. To authenticate this story, Bernhardt even claimed to have been a U-530 crew member. Another writer, James Robert, claimed that Bernhardt was actually the captain of U-530 in a 2005 series of articles, Britain's Secret War in Antarctica. Despite this, the name Wilhelm Bernhard does not appear in the crew list of U-530 that the Argentine Navy compiled, though some claim the name Bernhard is actually a pen name of one of the crew members, hence why it does not appear. The concept of New Berchtesgaden and the Phantom Convoy is largely attributed to Szabo's imagination. Nevertheless, these ideas have been embraced and perpetuated in Nazi mythology by various authors ever since. A number of writers not only accept the existence of this supposed hidden base, but also believe in a concerted effort to suppress information about it. They have collectively elaborated on Szabo's initial claims, suggesting that US forces attempted to assault the German stronghold during Operation Highjump in the summer of 1946 to 1947. According to these authors, the US forces were repelled by the advanced weaponry of the German defenders, prompting an earlier-than-planned retreat. The story has only become more intricate and embellished over time. James Robert, however, provides an alternate viewpoint, claiming the existence of both a secret German base and a covert British base in Queen Maud Land during World War II. He alleges that the British Army's SAS launched an attack in an attempt to obliterate the German base around Christmas 1945, though this mission was unsuccessful, as were the subsequent American efforts during Operation Highjump. He claims that the German base was ultimately decimated in 1958 through the secret detonation of 3 atomic bombs, as part of the International Geophysical Year activities. Robert accuses the US and British governments of deliberately concealing the truth about these events, referring to it as, quote, a travesty of history. Indeed, there are elements of truth embedded within these claims. The Germans had intentions of establishing a base in Queen Maud Land. The British did maintain secret bases in Antarctica during World War II. Operation Highjump was a military operation shrouded in secrecy, and 3 secret nuclear detonations did occur in the vicinity in 1958. However, none of the German documents from the era reference any plans to create a base during the 1938 to 1939 expedition, nor is there any indication that such an attempt was ever made subsequently. One author, Christoph Friedrich, even fabricated evidence to support his claim in his 1979 book, Germany's Antarctic Claim: Secret Nazi Polar Expeditions. He produced a photograph supposedly showing a German aircraft which landed on a frozen lake in Antarctica, but the photo is actually of an ice shelf adjacent to the ocean, not a lake. James Robert proposes the theory that a hidden Nazi Antarctic base within extensive caverns was deemed plausible enough to prompt the British to establish numerous stations across Antarctica during World War II as a countermeasure. British troops were deployed as part of Operation Tabarin, mostly setting up outposts along the Antarctic Peninsula and nearby islands, though it suggested a select few were situated on the continent. Robert specifically points to an undocumented base in Queen Maud Land, named Maudheim. According to Robert, this base was assaulted by the Germans in July 1945, prompting a rescue mission by the SAS, who supposedly spent the Christmas of 1945 in combat. However, by this time, the war with Germany had been done for over 7 months. While Operation Tabarin was initially classified, subsequent publications have provided a transparent account of its undertakings. The team set off from London in November 1943, making their way to the Falklands and subsequently departing for Antarctica on January 29, 1944. Their journey led them to Deception Island and later to various locations along the Antarctic Peninsula for the establishment of different bases. These stations were modest in size and personnel, comprising naval observers, wireless operators, and scientists, continuing the scientific endeavors similar to the British Graham Land expedition of 1934 to 1937. Their primary objective was scientific research to bolster Britain's territorial claims. Post-World War II, in July 1945, Operation Tabarin transitioned to a civilian undertaking as the Falkland Islands Dependencies Survey, with ongoing scientific efforts and routine base maintenance. Contrary to Robert's claims of British inactivity in Antarctica from late summer 1946 until 1948, historical records show that 5 civilian British bases were operational in West Antarctica in 1947 during Operation Highjump. Additionally, there's no solid evidence to back Robert's claims of an Operation Tabarin base on the coast of Queen Maud Land. It's unlikely that the British would have considered establishing a base there, given it was located in the zone of Norwegian claims and well outside the UK's Falkland Islands Dependencies jurisdiction. Regarding the alleged SAS involvement, there's no evidence of SAS presence in the Falkland Islands in October 1945, although a biography of Lieutenant Colonel R.B. Mayne, former commander of the 1st SAS Regiment, mistakenly suggests his arrival in the Falklands in September 1945. Subsequent research based on Mayne's diary and family papers corrects this, placing his arrival in January 1946. Mayne, along with Majors J. Tonkin and M. Sadler, both from the SAS and having signed civilian contracts with FIDS, played a role in relieving existing bases and establishing new ones. However, Mayne had to return to the UK in March 1946 due to health issues. Consequently, the British were not conducting mysterious operations in Antarctica during or immediately following World War II, nor did they establish a wartime base in Queen Maud Land or deploy the SAS there at the close of 1945. Operation Tabarin had already transitioned to a civilian project, and the SAS had been disbanded, making such operations infeasible. Another operation briefly mentioned previously in this video was Operation Highjump, conducted by the United States Navy in the years following the war. Many authors assert, without any substantial proof, that the US's Operation Highjump to Antarctica during 1946 to 1947 aimed to obliterate a concealed German base in Queen Maud Land. Buchner and Bernhardt insinuate that the capture and subsequent interrogations of the U-boat crews in 1945 revealed the existence of extensive subterranean facilities in Antarctica, used by the Germans for developing cutting-edge aircraft and weaponry. They propose that Operation Highjump was the US's strategic response to locate and dismantle this Nazi enterprise. Willibald Mattern and Christoph Friedrich make a bold claim in their 1975 book, UFOs, Nazi's Secret Weapon, in which they attributed a quote to Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, the operation's organizer, stating that the intention of Highjump was, quote, to break the last desperate resistance of Adolf Hitler, in case we find him in his new Berchtesgaden inside New Schwabenland in the Queen Maud Land region, or to destroy him. Of course, there was no source given for this quote. Joseph P. Farrell, in his 2005 book, Reich of the Black Sun, Nazi Secret Weapons in the Cold War Allied Legend, references Henry Stevens' 1997, the last battalion in German Antarctic, Antarctic and Andean bases, when making the following claim. Outfitted for a stay of 8 months, the expedition encircled the German claimed territory of Neuschwabenland, Admiral Byrd stationing the naval vessels off the coast, and then advanced the ground troops and aerial reconnaissance from the pole toward the German territory. Allegedly, the German base was quickly found, overflown, and either an American flag or a bomb, depending on the version of the story, was dropped on the position. However, the narratives presented by these authors are rife with issues, the most prominent being the reason Operation Highjump was conducted in the first place. They attempt to establish a direct connection between the 1945 U-boat crew interrogations and the supposed sudden U.S. interest in Antarctica in 1946. This completely disregards the listed objectives in the U.S. Navy's report of the operation, as well as Rear Admiral Byrd's background as a polar explorer, having made previous flights attempting to reach both the North and South Poles, as well as having taken part in 3 previous Antarctic expeditions. Operation Highjump was unprecedented in scale, consisting of over 4,700 personnel, 33 aircraft, and 13 ships. Authorized by Admiral Chester Nimitz on August 26, 1946, and led by Rear Admiral Richard H. Cruzen, with Rear Admiral Byrd in a supervisory role, its stated objectives from the Navy's report were the following: training personnel and testing equipment in frigid conditions. 1. Consolidating and extending the United States' sovereignty over the largest practicable area of the Antarctic continent, which was publicly denied as a goal before the expedition ended. 2. Determining the feasibility of establishing, maintaining, and utilizing bases in the Antarctic and investigating possible base sites. 3. Developing techniques for establishing, maintaining, and utilizing air bases on ice, with particular attention to later applicability of such techniques to operations in interior Greenland, where conditions are comparable to those in the Antarctic. 4. Amplifying existing stores of knowledge of electromagnetic, geological, geographic, hydrographic, and meteorological propagation conditions in the area. 5. Supplementary objectives of the Nanook expedition, a smaller equivalent conducted off eastern Greenland. The operation was not a scientific mission, but a military operation, integral to the U.S. Navy's polar training initiative amidst rising tensions with the Soviet Union. This was not kept a secret, as the operation had extensive media coverage and participation by journalists. The official report of the operation, although initially classified as confidential, was comprehensive and once declassified, contradicted claims of information suppression. No evidence was found to support theories of a concealed Nazi threat, the only acknowledged threat being from the Soviet Union. Furthermore, the geographic focus of Operation Highjump debunks the theory of a primary mission to target a German base in Queen-Maud-Land, as activities were concentrated on the opposite side of the continent near Byrd's Little America 4 base. The operation's exploration efforts extended from the Ross Sea to the South Pole, and along coastal regions, without any specific emphasis on the German-claimed territory. The U.S.'s aerial ventures scarcely overlapped with the territories previously mapped by the German expeditions in 1938 to 1939. Time constraints relegated the survey of Queen-Maud-Land to a cursory examination, with Eastern and Western task forces converging from opposite directions. Misconceptions regarding the expedition's intended duration fueled speculation among various authors about a premature conclusion and concealed motives. However, the reality was that delays and challenging conditions shortened the stay in Antarctica, closely mirroring the time spent by the German expedition. Despite these setbacks, the expedition fulfilled most of its military objectives, though it came at the cost of an aircraft and its crew on December 30, 1946. Conspiracy theories suggesting a U.S. intention to target a supposed German base in Queen-Maud-Land can be dismissed, highlighting an evident lack of interest in the area. Nevertheless, the U.S.'s curiosity about German activities stemmed from territorial claim concerns, prompting American expeditions and leading to the formation of the U.S. Antarctic Service in 1939. Mattern and Friedrich, along with Farrell, put forward an unsubstantiated theory claiming that Byrd's aircraft encountered a German base during Operation Highjump, resulting in the downing of 4 aircraft due to Nazi secret weaponry. Mattern and Friedrich maps mark the aircraft as lost around 73 degrees south and 23 degrees east, significantly eastward of the Moylig-Hoffmann Mountains. Farrell describes this incident as a turning point for the Highjump operation, noting a drastic change in its course and highlighting Byrd's swift decision to cancel the expedition and withdraw from Antarctica, all within 48 hours. However, Farrell notes that no official explanation was provided for this abrupt end to the mission, which lasted around 8 weeks instead of the planned 8 months. Buchner and Bernhardt highlight a 1948 European publication, Brisant, which reported numerous losses of Byrd's men and aircraft under mysterious circumstances, allegedly involving unidentified enemy aircraft. They also mention a novel, Genesis by W.A. Harbinson, as another source for this claim. Furthermore, Mattern, Friedrich, and a writer by the name of Eric J. Sharon argue that the German base was protected by advanced secret weapons, including flying saucers. The late English professor Nicholas Goodrick Clark, in his 2002 book Black Sun, Aryan Cults, Esoteric Nazism, and the Politics of Identity, provides the following explanation for the rise of Nazi UFO claims. As early as the 1950s, rumors began to circulate among certain German nationalist circles that the post-war flying saucers were in fact German superweapons that had been under development and tested during the Third Reich. At the time of Germany's surrender in May 1945, this technology was supposedly shipped to safety in the Arctic, South America, and Antarctica. The abundance of UFO sightings was thus attributed to hidden Nazi presence in remote, inaccessible regions of the world. By the late 1970s, neo-Nazi writers were claiming that the last battalion, a massive Nazi military force of highly advanced UFOs, was in possession of a vast tract of Antarctica. However, official records and film taken during Operation Highjump debunks these theories, showing that Byrd primarily flew in the Ross Sea region in the South Pole, around 2,000 kilometers away from Queen Maud Land. Additionally, they show no U.S. armed forces landing at Queen Maud Land and that the only aircraft lost during Highjump crashed on the opposite side of Antarctica from Queen Maud Land. The flying saucer narrative gained traction in UFO circles, particularly due to a supposed statement from Byrd, reported by American journalist Lee Van Atta in the Chilean newspaper El Mercurio on March 5, 1947. The article text translated from Spanish into English is the following. Admiral Richard E. Byrd warned today that the United States should adopt measures of protection against the possibility of an invasion of the country by hostile planes coming from the polar regions. The admiral explained that he was not trying to scare anyone, but the cruel reality is that in case of a new war, the United States could be attacked by planes flying over one or both poles. This statement was made as part of a recapitulation of his own polar experience, in an exclusive interview with International News Service. Talking about the recently completed expedition, Byrd said that the most important result of his observations and discoveries is the potential effect they have in relation to the security of the United States. The fantastic speed with which the world is shrinking, recalled the admiral, is one of the most important lessons learned during his recent Antarctic exploration. I have to warn my compatriots that the time has ended when we were able to take refuge in our isolation and rely on the certainty that the distances, the oceans, and the poles were a guarantee of safety. The article and claimed statement from Byrd were referenced by Mattern and Friedrich, but the excerpt from the article used in their book is different from the translation just given. According to them, Byrd said that, quote, "In case of a new war, the continental United States would be attacked by flying objects which could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds." Despite it being a mistranslation, this quote would go on to be repeated and referenced by a number of other writers in the decades to come. Whether or not the mistranslation was an accident or deliberate is anyone's guess. But considering that Friedrich would go on to fabricate photographic evidence in a subsequent book, the second option doesn't seem far-fetched. Another interesting note is that Christoph Friedrich is actually a pseudonym. In truth, the author was a neo-Nazi and Holocaust denier by the name of Ernst Zundel, who had been writing under his middle names. As Professor Goodrick Clark wrote, during the 1970s, Wilhelm Landig and Ernst Zundel, both neo-Nazi publishers and authors, blended these stories, hints, and suggestions into a powerful and elaborate myth of Nazi resurgence. Henry Stevens, referencing Wilhelm Landig in his 2003 book, Hitler's Flying Saucers, mentions a concealed German base that supposedly operated until the late 1950s, which became a target for an American nuclear test under the guise of the International Geophysical Year 1957-58, a worldwide research program with 3 bombs detonated. James Robert and Joseph P. Farrell also acknowledged Stevens' 1997 claim about 3 nuclear bombs being detonated over Antarctica on 27th and 30th August, and 6th of September 1958. However, while 3 covert nuclear detonations did occur in the Southern Hemisphere in 1958, they were not above Antarctica and were not kept secret. The tests were part of Operation Argus, conducted by the U.S. during the IGY. Walter Sullivan, in his 1961 book, Assault on the Unknown, the International Geophysical Year, provides an extensive description of the event, and L.E. de Geer, a representative from the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty Organization, confirmed this in January of 2006. Operation Argus, happening 1760 kilometers southwest of Cape Town, South Africa, involved 3 high-altitude test shots of the W-25 warhead. The objective was to study nuclear explosion effects outside the atmosphere. there, examining interactions with the Earth's magnetic field and potential disruptions to radar tracking, communications, and satellite and missile electronics. The tests were conducted at altitudes of 160 kilometers on 27th of August, 290 kilometers on August 30th, and 750 kilometers on September 6th, with varying geographic coordinates detailed by Sullivan. The 3 detonation sites were significantly north of Queen Maud Land's coast. Independent verification from the British Antarctic Survey, communicated by Director C. Rapley on January 17, 2006, states that nuclear tests over Antarctica would have resulted in a pronounced peak in beta radioactivity. Although beta radioactivity increased in Antarctica from 1954 due to nuclear tests, mainly by the US and the Soviet Union, the fact that there was no outstanding peak around 1958 suggests no nuclear detonations occurred in the vicinity. Rapley provides a graph of beta ray radioactivity against snow depth in Coates Land from Professor Eric W. Wolf, E.D. Suddy, and D.A. Peel, who were writing for Atmospheric Environment, corroborating this absence. A nearby nuclear explosion would have created a pronounced radiation peak in the analyzed core, but this was not observed. This, along with Sullivan's account and De Geer's confirmation, debunks Stevens and Roberts' claims of atmospheric nuclear tests over Queen Maud Land in 1958. The presence of scientists from Norway, Belgium, Britain, and Japan in IGY research stations in the area during that time further negates the possibility of such tests. Today, 85 years after the Third German Antarctic expedition began, it remains a subject of intense debate and speculation. This is despite the fact that no German documents were found that indicate any continued activity in Queen Maud Land following the expedition during the war, and despite the presentation of evidence thoroughly debunking the claims made by numerous authors and conspiracy theorists. The truth is, no secret German base was ever constructed in Antarctica. The arrival of U-boats in Argentina does not indicate that Hitler or his close associates were ever secretly transported to such a base. Operation Tabarin did not involve the rescue of British personnel by the SAS after a German assault on a UK Antarctic base. The purpose of Operation Highjump was for personnel training and equipment testing, not to assault the last remaining Nazi holdout. No flying saucers were developed, found, or fought against in Antarctica, and the nuclear detonations as part of Operation Argus did not occur above Antarctica. Official German activity in Antarctica did not resume until after 1959, marked by the German participation in the Russian expedition to the Schirmacher Oasis. It wasn't until 1981 that Germany established a lasting presence in Antarctica, with the creation of the Georg von Neymar Station Research Facility. The Norwegians, made aware of the German expedition after its arrival through reports from whalers operating in the vicinity, maintained control over the area. Today, it remains a dependent territory of Norway under the governance of the Antarctic Treaty System.